So here's a different way you can start to tackle some rowing movements, especially when we look at trying to then get into the weeds and some of the things that can happen and then we can create in terms of creating strength and creating movement at the same time. Your rib cage is not very solid. I know this kind of looks like it, but when we look at the rib cage, it's cartilaginous in the front. So basically your rib cage can compress and expand when we do certain different exercises. So especially when we start looking at, trying to create some fluidity, create rotation. When we look at rowing movements, we start to look at posterior expansion and compression. Really more expansion on the front side of your rib cage and compression on the back, right? Because when I pull here, and if I row, basically what I'm doing is my lats, my rhomboids, they're all compressing the backside of my rib cage in order to then basically create some extra movement, all right? Now, the way that we can start to toy around with this, because if I do this bilaterally and do a row, well, I'm compressing both sides of my rib cage. Now, there's a way that we can create more movement, isolate each individual side a little bit more, is that I can actually hold in the compressed state on one side and then work through compression and expansion. So if I'm here and I'm just rowing, right? Compression, expansion of the posterior rib cage. Now, if I want to take this up a notch, what I can do is basically alternate while holding in a position. So if I want to do this, and hopefully you can see that other arm, but I can hold my right arm and let my left go through expansion and then compress, and expand, and then compress. I could do it on the other side. Expand, compress, expand, compress. So what's happening is the backside of that rib cage is getting locked in, and so when I actually get a little bit of extra rotation here, and I'm really trying to keep everything locked in on that one side. So when you're starting to look at certain movements, we can start to toy around this. We can do the same thing with a bench press or a shoulder press, right? Especially if I have a machine or dumbbells, we can hold and then push with the other arm, right? Hold and push. Now the other way we can do this is alternate, right? So we showed you the simple way of just going and creating some movement and keeping compressed on one side and expanding and compressing on the other side. We can then alternate this movement to create a little bit more of a fluid motion. So if we compress, right? And then we can compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand, right? We can make it even faster. Compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand, and then even start to make it more fluid, right? And then we can start, right? Compress, expand, compress, expand, compress, expand. These are just different ways that we can start to tackle and try to work, especially when we look at fluid movements, creating a little bit of rotation in your thoracic spine, still building strength, right? Like obviously we only have this loaded up so much because somebody else is using it, forgot to put their weights away, but being able to understand that if we can go through some of these movements, we can get a little extra back strength without losing mobility. We can actually create a little extra mobility and get a little bit more of an athletic effect and just feel better going throughout our daily lives. So there's a little bit of how you can take a rowing machine and do some compression expansion, holding isometrically by alternating, and then just moving through some different ranges of motion and creating even some rhythm as part of that. So there's just a little bit on some compression expansion posteriorly in your rib cage.